And they're waiting. All right, at this time, I'd like to introduce Laura Allen, who is one of our favorite indivisibles in the state, and she is our COINversation host. Hi, Laura.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Welcome, Representative Dexter. Thank you for joining us. I'm just going to jump right in and ask you to introduce yourself and tell us why you think you're the best person to represent the people of Congressional District 3.
Thank you so much. It's really a pleasure to be here. Thank you all for being here. I am Maxine Dexter. I use she, her pronouns. I am a mother, a physician, and a state representative, and I'm running for Congress to bring my unique blend of personal experience and professional expertise to Washington, D.C., where I will continue to do what I do best, listening, leading, and getting things done for the people of Oregon. I've cared for the people of CD3 as a pulmonary and critical care physician for over 15 years through some of the most challenging times in our healthcare history. Our children were in PPS schools in CD3 through middle school, and during that time, I was a core leader and organizer. Sorry, my husband is coming in right as I'm introducing myself. I'm sorry. Rob, can you please get her to stop? Sorry. And I was a core leader for our schools and our community. As a state lawmaker since 2020, I have proven that I will care for my district with compassion, courage, and commitment. And I'm known for really working hard to get things done. I know I can have impact as a lawmaker, and I will go to Congress to do all I can to be sure that every American and every Oregonian can live a healthy life in a healthy community, in a healthy environment.
Thank you. You've kind of alluded to this, but tell us, what are the two most concerning things in your district that you hope to work on when you're in Congress?
Yeah, housing and homelessness and healthcare. Oregonians have been clear that unaffordable housing costs and the humanitarian crisis on our streets are their top priority. And as we have already been trying to do, we need to continue to take immediate action. That's why former Speaker Rayfield chose me to be the chair of the Housing Committee, or the House Committee on Housing and Homelessness, where I fought to secure over $2 billion in housing investments over that time. And that's really something I accomplished through building strong bipartisan relationships and agreeing to put politics aside and focus on getting the things done that Oregonians want us to prioritize. In Congress, I'll continue this. I will prioritize building strong relationships, even across the aisle, and focusing on governing through durable policy and not press releases. I'll build on the work I've been doing for Oregonians by investing in affordable housing development, expanding the low-income housing tax credit, otherwise known as LIHTC, the Home Investment Partnerships Program, and the National Housing Trust Funds in particular. It's clear that we need more housing availability. This is a numbers game. There just aren't enough affordable units at every economic level. And we need to also make sure that we're creating opportunities for down payment assistance to keep Oregonians, working Oregonians in stable housing, and to build generational wealth. And finally, on the housing front, as a physician who's really been treating more and more homeless Oregonians, I understand very clearly that housing is healthcare, and housing alone cannot fix the humanitarian crisis that we have unfolding every day. We have to couple that with shelter services and social services and treatment. And we'll need to bring in federal dollars to help us do that. We can't do it alone at the state level. Pivoting to healthcare, as a pulmonary and critical care physician, I've spent over 2 decades taking care of the sickest members of our community. I've seen the impact of inaccessible and unaffordable healthcare on my own family and on my patients. In the Oregon legislature, I lowered the cost of prescription drugs, protected access to abortion and gender-affirming care, put Oregon on the path to universal healthcare, and invested in the behavioral health supports our community desperately needs, from more beds to more providers. In Congress, I'll work with my colleagues pragmatically and strategically to pass legislation to ensure that every American has access to high-quality, affordable, accessible healthcare. Those federal investments that we need to bring detox beds and drug treatment programs to Oregon will be a priority, including medical assistance therapy for opioid addiction, until we have more therapy and treatment available to people with addiction than fentanyl, we are going to continue to see escalating deaths. This is an incredible crisis. And we need to integrate social and healthcare delivery pipelines for patients in need. We have too many silos, and we really need to work hard to break those down.
In terms of healthcare, would you like to talk about abortion as healthcare and what you would do in Congress?
Yeah, as a woman, as a mother to children in our world, and as a physician, that is a top priority. We in Oregon have the most protected rights, reproductive rights in the country, and I've been front and center working on that as not just as a physician who's informing the policy, but really bringing stories to my colleagues to help them understand the reality of what access to abortion care means and what the reality of protecting our providers, which really has become a major issue now with Idaho and other really restrictive policies that are impacting providers in other states. We had to protect the ability of our providers and clinicians to give that care. So the things that we've done in Oregon need to be done nationally, and it has to be a first item. Democracy, protecting the integrity of our democracy and protecting abortion rights. And frankly, if we had passed an equal rights amendment for women many years ago, decades ago, this would not be an issue, and we still need to get that done in the longer term. We've passed it, we just need to finalize it.
Another aspect of healthcare that you've been a champion on in Oregon is mental health care, especially for students, college students, high school students. You had a bill this past session. In Congress, tell us what your work on that would look like on a federal level.
I am so grateful, Laura, that you have been paying attention. You know all this, so thank you. Indeed, school-based health centers, I think, really are strategic, impressively important infrastructure for access across our country. We used to, as some people may remember, schools were where you went to go get vaccinations and to get TB skin testing and to get social services connections. And we have lost our investment there. And what we're seeing now is that working parents can't get their children to the doctor. They can't get themselves to the physician. And we have lack of access to mental health. I was just at Roosevelt High School a week and a half ago. They have 5 mental health full-time therapists on their in their school-based health center, in their wellness center, and it's not enough. Like, they are oversubscribed. Our students need assistance, and school-based health centers is one really low barrier way to do it. The federal government and the states have already built, and local communities, obviously with property taxes, have already built the infrastructure. We just need to put the clinicians there. Now with telemedicine, it's much more effective. Pivoting then to prevention for opioid addiction, we can't treat or arrest our way out of this issue. We have to prevent it. And so really offering access to education and prevention services, as well as treatment early, so that people who do become addicted, in their younger years, and we're just hiding our heads believing that that doesn't happen, it does. So really focusing on youth, as Representative Reynolds said, if we take care of childhood poverty, we take care of many of the issues our society is facing. And so part of that is doing it in schools and making sure that our families have access to healthcare. So that's one issue. And then the opioid harm reduction package was born from me seeing firsthand a 17-year-old who unintentionally overdosed with an OxyContin pill that was a counterfeit pill laced with fentanyl. His friends were at a party with him. They didn't know that he was dying, and I had to pronounce him brain dead. And we did everything we could to save that young man's life. And just seeing him, I knew that could have been any of our children or grandchildren, and we had to take action. So our opioid harm reduction package that we passed in 2023 did things like getting naloxone into schools. And we had Republicans voting to give the school the right to give naloxone without parental consent, which is a big deal for them. And they decriminalized fentanyl test strips. The University of Oregon students were desperate to get those out to their students, and Oregon was worried about the liability. And so we did that amongst many other things. There were 13 policies in that package that passed overwhelmingly through both through both chambers. And it was because we dug in and we saw that it was a shared issue that we all agreed on. And we took the really controversial things out and still got a really important package passed.
Thank you. You've talked about this a bit. We believe the Democrats will take back the House this year, but the House is still likely to remain very divided. And so how do you plan to work in a divided House, or even one that may still be controlled by MAGA, in order to get the things done that you want to do?
Yeah, it's such an important question. Thank you. As you already said, our community is really struggling with many challenges, and a divided Congress is one that is just not working for us. I'm out there a lot talking to a lot of people, and my children, people in general, just ask, why would you want to go there? It doesn't work. And that is precisely why I need to go there, is because I grew up in a very conservative household. I still talk to my father. He last week described himself as making Ronald Reagan look like a Democrat. He is extremely conservative, and yet we have robust conversations and still, agree to love and care for one another, even though we vehemently disagree on many things. I think that's the pragmatism that I've brought to Oregon, and that's how I'm going to show up in Washington. I'm the only one in this race who is an experienced lawmaker. I've worked through divided bodies, the Republicans walking out and still making sure that we, negotiated to get things done. It means you don't get everything you want, but you can get to pretty important, impactful agreements. So my experience means that I know that I have to show up and listen and not presume that I have the answers. I will build those relationships early on. I'm not going to have any sort of influence or much influence in Congress, but what I can do is build relationships with people with influence and build that trust so that I can help pass important policy, and in that also build a reputation for myself, which is what I did with now Congresswoman Salinas when she was healthcare chair. I helped her get policies passed, including the public option and the mergers and acquisitions bill, which then led to her trusting me and helping me get some important policies done. So the experience I have there, passing back-to-back housing packages that were historic and really important in nature, that was done with bipartisan support, because I'm comfortable with disagreement and having hard conversations and listening to people and finding those areas of alignment. And we have to break down the identity politics that we're seeing in Washington and just get things done for the people of our United States.
Thank you. So is there anything else that you'd like us to know about you?
Yeah, I guess just reiterating that I think it's really a unique opportunity to have somebody who's first in their family to go to college, really truly from a working class background. I'm still the only person in my family to have graduated from college. And that was an opportunity I had because of strong public schools, affordable higher ed, a union job. I understand that opportunity doesn't exist for people in our communities now. I certainly don't see it for my children and their friends. My children have opportunity, but many people don't. And we need to have lasting policy change. And so this is an influential seat. We know that Earl Blumenauer has been there for 26, almost 27 years. Whoever wins the primary will almost certainly win the general. And it's a race amongst friends. We're all good, progressive candidates. So what I want to leave you with is the question of whether, when you go to the ballot, you want to vote for someone who you hope will be a good lawmaker, or someone you know who will be effective. And I'm the only candidate who has been a lawmaker and who has proven that I can get hard things done in a divided and highly politicized body, and really appreciate your consideration and your conversation tonight.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us, Representative Dexter.
Thank you. Should I just head out?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Sheila's just joining us. She's here now.
I should point out while we're waiting that we did this alphabetically. So it was, we'll see who gets the last word here. All right.
Okay, we should be good to go. Hi, Susheela.
Hi there. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening. I'm Laura Allen. I'll be your moderator tonight. So I'm just going to jump right in and ask you to introduce yourself and tell us why you think you're the best person to represent the people of Congressional District 3.
Great. Well, thank you all so much. Really appreciate your being here on a Tuesday night and making time for this. By way of introduction, a little bit about how I got to this point. For those of you I haven't met yet, and I see some familiar faces on here, I am an immigrant. I came to the US when I was 16 to go to college. Grew up in India and Indonesia, and my parents sent me here because they truly believed in something that I think many of us have become cynical about, and that is the American dream, right? They genuinely believed that this was a place where their daughters were going to have opportunity that they wouldn't have anywhere else. So they sacrificed a lot to do that. They sacrificed financially. They really couldn't afford it. And they sacrificed personally in the sense that they are now 84 and 94 years old, and they are in India, and they have grown old without their children close by. So I carry that. I carry that experience. I carry the experience of the opportunity they gave me, the doors that education opened for me, and also the experience of what it's like to live on the margins. And that has really been what has fueled and driven me into public service and then now into politics. So that's a little bit about the why. Why do I think I'm the best candidate to represent the 3rd Congressional District? A combination of things, combination of personal experience, professional experience, and the values that I believe reflect the values of this district. So I've talked a little bit about my personal experience. I have also now lived in this district for 30 years, brought my children up here. They graduated from Grant High School. And that has fostered a set of deep relationships that I think are going to be critical for whoever is elected to this seat. It's so important to take the community with you. And if you look at my endorsements, for example, you will see that those endorsements reflect the breadth and the diversity of this district, from different sectors to different communities. It is really reflective of my connection to the district. So connection to the district, professional experience. I'm a lawyer, practiced law for a period of time, both as a litigator and then ran the legal department at Adidas America. So I've been in the private sector. I've also been a nonprofit leader, served on the boards of a number of different organizations, including our local Planned Parenthood, organizations that focus on education, social services, and then most recently have been a county commissioner, which has allowed me the great privilege and honor of working on an incredibly broad range of issues, from homelessness to public safety to healthcare to the environment. So all of those issues are all of those experiences are what I would take with me. And the last piece, I think, is around the progressive values of this district. I believe, the strongest progressive in this race. I am an unabashed supporter of Medicare for all or universal single-payer healthcare. I am an unabashed supporter of the Green New Deal and a just transition to a green economy. I am the only candidate who is not accepting corporate PAC donations. And there are many other policy issues happy to talk about, but the last one I'll mention is that I am the only candidate who has called for a ceasefire in Gaza. And I did that back in November. And I specifically mention it because I've heard some say that, that's not really an issue for us here in the 3rd Congressional District. That is an issue that is overseas. And I strongly beg to differ. I think that is integrally connected to the values of this district. It's integrally connected to funding and resources and how we use our resources as a country. And I think that foreign policy is a crucial part of this job, and that our values in foreign policy and our values in domestic policy need to be aligned. So it's that combination, personal experience, professional experience, and the values that reflect this district.
Okay, so when you get to Congress, and you've alluded to a few of the issues that you care about, what are the two most concerning things in your district that you hope to work on?
Yeah, I want to reflect what I hear from people. I've been knocking on doors already for a while, and I hear two sets of issues. I hear people really concerned about the broad issues around democracy, protecting our democracy, around civil rights, around protecting reproductive freedom, right? So these broad issues. And then I hear really specific issues about housing and homelessness, and climate change. So I'm going to focus on those specific issues and say those are the two that are district specific that I would hope to work on. So on housing, really quickly, I believe that the federal government needs to be back in the business of creating affordable housing in a significant, substantial way, which it has not been since the 80s. And to me, the vision, and I think we always have to have a bold vision and then also take sort of more concrete steps to get there. But to me, the vision is that the government is back in the business of building affordable housing. So massive investments in affordable housing, also investments in vouchers, which is rent assistance that make them available to everybody who needs them. And then help with homeownership, because we've got to address housing across the economic spectrum. And then on climate change, and here I think we can connect these things. We can connect climate change to housing. Huge supporter of Senator Sanders' Green New Deal for public housing, which is to invest in maintaining and building public housing in a way that creates climate resilience, that moves us towards a green economy, and that creates jobs in the process. So, and then I'll mention also resilience, climate resilience in other ways. We saw the impacts of the ice storm. We've seen the impacts of the heat dome. So we need to do things that protect our neighborhoods from those severe weather events. And that's things like providing heat pumps so they can cool their spaces during a heat dome, or planting trees, again, to mitigate heat, creating resilience hubs in our neighborhoods. Those are all things that I would plan to work on.
Okay, thank you. So we hope the Democrats will take back the House this year. I mean, we believe they will, but the House will still remain very divided. How do you plan to work in a divided House, or even one that's still controlled by MAGA, to get these kinds of things you're talking about done?
Yeah, such a great question. And I think I'm asked some version of it every day. I think the best way I can respond is to give you an example of how I worked when I was at the county commission. So when I was at the county commission, obviously representing Multnomah County, perhaps the most progressive county in the state, but working with county commissioners from rural districts, from very conservative Republican districts, I created what we called an exchange with a county commissioner from Union County. I had met him at an event 5 years ago when we were new commissioners, and suggested it back then, and we just did it last summer. So I went to Union County for 4 days. He came to Multnomah County for 4 days. I will tell you, I'm not sure which of us was more nervous about visiting the other's space, but it was really an extraordinary experience. You know, he took me to ranches and farms, took me to a butcher shop. I learned about what he loves about where he lives. I learned about the issues that they're facing. And then he came to Multnomah County and did the same. There was no agenda. It was just curiosity and a chance for us to learn about each other's jurisdictions and constituents. And through that, we found common issues and common ground. You know, when I was in Union County, farmers and ranchers are talking about corporate consolidation and what that's doing to family farms. We're talking about corporate consolidation and what that's doing to healthcare, for example. I'm talking about corporate consolidation and what that means for an economy that doesn't work for people who aren't wealthy or who aren't part of big corporations. So we found these common issues and then common ground on some, you know, we didn't solve the state's urban-rural divide in one visit, but I think that's how we work together. I will say that I would not have done that exchange with anybody. I trusted, I knew him enough to trust that we had some shared values. And, you know, I think that there are people in Congress with whom I'm not going to have shared values. But if we approach each other with curiosity and a desire to learn, I think there's a chance to find common ground. And that's how I would operate.
Thank you. Tell us what else you'd like us to know about you.
Well, I'm trying to think what we haven't covered yet. I would say that I talked about why I'm running in the sense of my trajectory here. Maybe I'll say a little bit more about that. I find it unacceptable that in this country, we can simultaneously have a man who owns a $500 million yacht and have people who are sleeping on the streets and can't afford food on the table. So that's really what drives me, because I know that it is possible. It should be possible for us to meet the promise of this country, the promise that my parents sent me here for. And that is, it's that economic system is unacceptable. I think it's unacceptable that we are on the brink. We've lost Roe versus Wade, and we're on the brink of losing even more reproductive freedoms, right? I think about the fact that when I was 25 years old and needed an abortion, I was able to get one because of Roe versus Wade. And just a month ago, another 25-year-old risked her life because she wasn't able to get one. I find it unacceptable that in 2000, I was on the board of the first Planned Parenthood clinic in the country to offer medication-assisted abortion. And last week, we were on the brink of losing it. We may still be on the brink of losing it. So we're at this incredibly pivotal time. And I think that, that combination of experiences and values is what makes me want to run for Congress. And I'll say one more thing. As I'm out knocking on doors, I've had people ask me why Congress matters. And it tells us how disconnected people feel from DC, right? But here's why it matters. That's where we set the vision of who we want to be. And then that's where there's the biggest range of policy levers and resources to bring that vision into fruition. So that I'll close with that.
Thank you. I just want to follow up briefly. You, at the beginning of that answer, you talked about income inequality basically as being, and I think we can all agree it's at the root of so many problems that we have. How would you, as a member of Congress, address that and try to change that?
I think there are so many pathways, and some are really big and some are concrete and specific. And again, I think we need to be able to operate on both levels, on really big kind of visionary levels, and also do things that may seem small bore, but have really concrete impact. I think of that as the Elizabeth Warren School of Policymaking, which is there are small things we can do that really affect people's daily lives. So I'll offer a range of things. Tax policy. I mean, I think that is a logical place to go in addressing income inequality. And that can be anything from taxing capital gains at a higher rate, because we have dramatically lowered the rate at which we tax capital gains, and that's had an effect on income inequality because poor people don't have capital gains, right? Their income is from their labor, and that's taxed at a relatively high rate. So there's tax policy. I think there are things like raising the federal minimum wage. It's shocking that the federal minimum wage is at $7.25 an hour. So there's a range of things on the income side. And then there are things on sort of the expense side, making housing more affordable, making healthcare more affordable, providing childcare that allows people to learn. So there's just a huge range of policy options. And shared prosperity, I think, is what we all want, and it is achievable. It's not the case that there's not enough to be able to get to shared prosperity. There's enough. We can get there.
Thank you very much. We appreciate you coming tonight to talk with us.
I appreciate it. Really nice to see all of you. Good night.
Good night.
Okay, I just let Eddy in.
Okay.
Let's find him.
Hi,
Hi, I am trying to find you so I can highlight you, Eddy.
I wish I could say I'm right here.
Oh, there
then
you
would
are. There
know.
you are. Here we go. Okay. Go ahead, Laura.
Thank you. Hi, Eddy. My name is Laura Allen. I'm the moderator tonight, and I'm just going to start off by asking you to introduce yourself and tell us why you think you're the best person to represent the people of Congressional District 3.
Right. Well, thanks for having me, Laura, and the indivisible groups who are presented here today. My name is Eddy Morales, and I'm a 6-year city councilor here in the city of Gresham. And really, I wanted to start by saying that my story starts off with my mother. My mother came to this country in the trunk of a car, and my 8 siblings followed in the back seat of strangers' cars. And she made that sacrifice because she wanted a better life for us. When I was 6 years old, my mother fled another dangerous situation. This time she left Los Angeles to get away from domestic violence. And in the middle of the night, she asked my brother to drive us north. And we ended up in Woodburn, Oregon. And my mother brought us up by taking care of farm workers' kids and making lunches for farm workers there. My mother quickly learned that the way she could get us housing is to exchange childcare and feeding people for shelter. And so we moved quite a bit, depending on who needed a place, someone to take care of their children or needed to be cared for. And that's how I ended up in Oregon. I mean, in Portland and now East County. In Oregon, I was the first in my family to graduate high school. I was the first to go to college. And in college, my freshman year, I remember there was a group of farm worker women who came and spoke to us. And they said, we're not getting paid fair wages. And we have horrible working conditions. And those women reminded me a lot of the women that I grew up around. And I said, well, how can we help? And they said, can you get your university to stop buying the mushrooms from this grower? And I said, yeah. And at the time, I didn't know that I was actually starting to lead a boycott around these mushrooms. And we did, and we got the university and the local grocery stores around there to stop doing that. And we won. And these farm worker women got better wages and got better working conditions. And I remember thinking, this was 25 years ago, if undocumented farm worker women in this country can win victories and have power, then every working person in this country can have victories and have power. And I'm going to dedicate the rest of my life to making sure that I'm working with people to build their power. After being here, I went to live in Washington, D.C., where I was the president of the United States Student Association. And I worked there for 13 years on public education. I worked with unions. I was on the board with Gloria Steinem around fighting for reproductive freedoms. And I also helped to pass the Affordable Care Act. I was assigned when I was there to organize locally, like the way you all do at the grassroots levels in Tennessee, in North Carolina, Ohio, and Missouri. And I remember asking my organizer, do you know that I'm a very feminine gay man? You're sending me to some really tough places to organize. What do you want me to succeed? And they said, Eddy, you're an organizer and you're very relational and you'll be able to win people over. And, one of the stories that I really love to tell about how the federal policymaking works and how grassroots organizing works is we were trying to get Senator Kay Hagan from North Carolina to sign on to the Affordable Care Act. And she refused to. She said, if I do that, it'll cost me my election. And she was a Democrat. And I said to the team, we're going to start bringing people who are impacted by healthcare to meet with their representatives in DC, and they're going to have to face them, and they'll hear the stories of how people are being impacted by not having healthcare. We brought 90 people from North Carolina to DC, and Senator Kay would not meet with them. She kept avoiding them. So we ended up bird dogging her and found out that she had a committee meeting that had been canceled. And all of us showed up to that committee room, and one after another, people said their stories about how, having a pre-existing condition prevented them from having healthcare. They could not afford their medications, or they lost their homes because of an emergency doctor's bill. And every single one of them said, and so what do you want to do with me, to Senator Kay Hagan? She eventually cracked in that meeting and committed to being a vote for this, which is the vote that we need and really a linchpin for getting a lot more support. I moved back here in 2016 after my mother passed away. See, when I went off to college, my grandmother got very sick, and my mom went to take care of her mother. And because of a broken immigration system, my mother got a 10-year ban and died 3 months before being able to move back into this country and being here. So I've worked on immigration reform and helped actually create the United We Dream network that got DACA in this country. I ran for local office, and I started East County Rising, which has recruited 68 grassroots leaders to run for office, and 60 of them have been elected from school boards, county level, state legislators, and even statewide office. When this position came open, my community said, Eddy, we need you to run for this. We need this lived experience that you have, as well as your organizing chops and the sense of urgency in which you operate in this position, because our country needs it. And what has worked in Oregon and this country and Gresham will work for the rest of this country. So that's why I'm running. The other thing I'll share with you all is I've lost 2 brothers to gun violence. And so I've been very active in the fight around more sensible gun laws. I lost 4 years ago a sister to addiction. My hardworking sister here in Oregon blew out her shoulder on an assembly line. And when she went to go get medical care, the doctor said, what's wrong? And looked at her shoulder and prescribed her opioids. Had that doctor asked my sister, what else is going on in your life? He would have known that my sister was going through a divorce. And the combination of someone who was depressed and their spirits were broken, not just their shoulder, and the cocktail of an opioid was a deathly combination. So I've been working again to work on healthcare. Those personal stories of mine are very similar to the ones that people in our district are facing. And those are the stories that I'm going to make sure are in Congress and are represented when I'm there.
Thank you, Eddy, for sharing such a personal answer with us. When you are in Congress, what are the 2 most concerning things in your district that you want to work on?
Yeah, Laura, and I share that story because, as you all know, in organizing, the way we build relationships with one another and the way we share values and priorities is through our storytelling, right? And for me, actually, organizing has been my outlet. People say you would be a very bitter person with all of those things that have happened to you. But for me, the act of organizing and making other people's lives better is what keeps me going. I would say that the 2 priorities for me going into Congress are going to be housing, affordable housing. And here in Gresham, I've been able to build multi-generational housing, over 400 units, really. These are homes that are 3 and 4 bedrooms, so people can live with grandparents, with their children, aunts, uncles. Enough of this idea that people aren't moving in and living with their loved ones. I grew up that way, and I know others do. We've also been able to build workforce housing here that was designed with people with disabilities for people with disabilities. And those homes are all run by solar power, so the people that live there don't ever have to pay an electric bill. I want to take these ideas and take them to scale, both for the state, but also nationally. The other piece that's really important for me is protecting our civil and expanding our rights. I'm the secretary of the board for Planned Parenthood here in Oregon in the Northwest. And while I've been on the board, we've been able to defeat attacks. You all remember Measure 106 a few years ago. They tried to repeal our public funding of abortions. We were able to defeat that. I've also been able to help build clinics to make sure that people on our neighboring states on the east side can access them. So we opened a clinic in Ontario. We also opened one here in East County so that people can have access to these rights. I will continue to fight to protect our rights for abortions. And also, I am married to a man, of my partner of 22 years. So I know that the decisions that this Supreme Court is trying to make, as well as this Congress, are going to impact my family directly. I also have mixed family members who are immigrants and U.S. born folks. They're on the chopping block next. And so really being a champion to fight for this is a big priority of mine. And I would just say the last is obviously climate. There's a lot more important issues, but I think climate gives us all the opportunity to hit reset on our economy, on our social contracts, and to really reimagine and build a system where your race and your class and your gender are not linked to what your outcomes of your economy are going to be. You know, when we set this country up, there were a lot of people that were not allowed to be part of the system. Resetting our economy through a Green New Deal and a green economy will help provide equalizers for that. So those are the things that I really want to go there and champion.
So we believe the Democrats will take back the House this year, but you may be going back to a House that's still controlled by MAGA. How do you plan to work in a House like that, or one that, even if the Democrats are in control, will still be divided? How will
Yeah.
you get things done?
Look, Laura, I have been a progressive for 25 years. I remember learning what a progressive was 25 years ago. But I also remember learning one thing, that in organizing, the most important thing that we can do is make concrete improvements in people's lives, and then give people a sense of their own power, and then build institutions like what you all have built that help alter those relationships of power between people and decision makers. So I don't want to go to Congress to be to chase celebrity, to fan flames, or throw mud. I want to go there and I work on the issues that are going to make concrete improvements in people's lives. You know, when I talked about the ACA story, what I failed to say is, like, I was assigned Southern Republican states, and states that didn't even want Medicaid expansion. And I was able to move and organize people and get members of those Congress to support the ACA. But it took organizing, and it really, what I tell people is, like, it starts with values. You know, I'm on a mixed council right now with ideology, where I would say progressives and Democrats are in the minority. And yet we have been able to build that affordable housing that I told you about. I'm currently working with Stacey Abrams and Rewire America to move homes from gas burning and wood burning stoves and furnaces to electric heat pumps. Again, we were able to get my council to support this. I was also able to do some reforms around the way that we do public safety here. You know, and I think when I talk to my counselors, I say, do we all believe that everyone in our city should have access to a good paying job with benefits and then be able to retire with dignity? They agree. When I then say there are a lot of different vehicles to getting there, one of those is a union, one of those is an apprenticeship program, they agree with those too. I think that's how we move policy forward. The last thing I will say is I am committed to winning majorities. You know, I have, like I said, recruited 68 people to run for office. 60 of them have gotten elected. When you all send me to Congress from a very safe district like this one here, I will be able to spend a lot of time organizing and recruiting better people all across this country to run for office, and then backing them so that we win real progressive majorities in this country. So again, kind of pragmatic policy work and simultaneously building our majorities.
Thank you. So in closing, what more would you like us to know about you or the issues that you care about?
Yeah. I just want to just reiterate that this forum is really important to me. I consider myself a grassroots organizer and organizer. That's been my career. You know, other people in this race have been corporate lawyers for Goldman Sachs or like Adidas or doctors. I have been in this fight for 25 years. This is how I've made my living. And I've done it on the issues that impacted my life and the community that I've lived in. And that's why I'm really proud that I got endorsed by Dolores Huerta. I've been endorsed by Stacey Abrams, you know, because I've worked with them across the country on issues like this. One story I wanted you all to know, in 2016, after Donald Trump got elected, I flew to DC and I actually pulled a convening of over, I think it was like 300 people. And it was like 2 weeks after Donald Trump got elected. And in that room, it was labor, it was enviro groups, reproductive rights groups, LGBTQ groups, you name it. And we met at the CWA, the Communication Workers of America building. And I had a woman named Heather McGee, who, if you all don't know her, you should look her up. I had her moderate, like paint a vision of what it was going to look like to be under a Trump presidency. I had Rashad Robinson from Color of Change talk about the different roles that people could play in the movement to be responsive and to fight back. And then I had Jen Brown, who ran Ohio for Obama the first time, talk about organizing strategies. There was 2 people in that room that I want you all to know about, Ezra and Leah. And they came up and they said, we have a bunch of staffers that can help do stuff. We gave them a breakout group. And just like months later, Indivisible was born. And they are now the co-founders. And so I say that story just to show you that, like, I build these broad coalitions. I bring people together in moments, and I bring the right people to create clarity for how we organize. And I actually have their book here that's signed by them, because they said in that moment, in that meeting where we were all confused, you brought us together, we came up with the plan, and we fought back. And so I just wanted to leave that with you all, because this network is very special to me. And those two are very special to me. And I hope that I will earn your support and that you will send an organizer, someone with real lived experience, to Congress to fight for all of us.
Thank you so much, Eddy, for joining us tonight.
Thank you. And have a good night, y'all.
All right.
Wow, thanks, Laura. That was awesome. And I think 3 wonderful candidates. So those of you who live in Congressional District 3 are really lucky to have 3 wonderful people to choose from at this time. So bravo to you. Teresa, you're muted.
Can't we send them all there?
I'm trying desperately to turn off the spotlight. I
wonderful.
just can't find it. I'm so sorry.
Those are exactly my thoughts, Craig. I just thought, man, they should all be there. Wow, tough decision.
It's a lot to think about.
Yeah.
Debbie, can you help me turn off the spotlight? I'm not seeing.
And the recording.
Oh, I'll do the recording next. There.